Welcome back, men. Proverbs 18:22. He who finds a good wife finds a good thing. There's an old joke that goes something like this. God says to Adam, I will create you the perfect wife for you. She will be loving, kind, obedient, beautiful. She will be amazing. She will even be submissive, never argue with you, and give you sex whenever you want it. Your marriage will be amazing, and all it's going to cost you, Adam, is an arm and a leg. To which Adam says, what can I get for a rib? Now, guys, listen, that's a joke. But I do believe God wants you to have the very best, most amazing marriage possible out there. Let me show you an example. There's a story I came across a long time ago, years ago, and I want to share it with you today. It's called the 7-Cow Wife. So in a small rural town in Africa, a young man decided he was ready to get married. It was the custom that in that area, when a young man decided he was ready to get married and sought out a wife, he would pay the bride's parents a dowry in cows. If a woman was average appearance and ability, the dowry might be 2 or 3 cows. If she was less than average, it would be even fewer. And if a particular young lady was extremely beautiful and talented, a young man might pay as high as 4 cows. As the story goes, George found a young lady who struck his fancy, but who was rather plain and ordinary. George approached her father and offered to pay him 7 cows for her hand in marriage. 7 cows? No one ever could remember anyone being paid that much for a wife. The whole town mocked George for being so foolish, and, well, the wedding day was set, and everyone in town was there. The bride's father put on quite a party, and the conversation all day long revolved around how foolish everyone thought George was for having paid 7 cows for such an ordinary and plain wife. Several years later, a traveling missionary came to town and began hearing all the stories about George and his 7-cow wife. How this young man had paid so much for an ordinary woman, and how the whole town had mocked them to the point they had moved away. The traveling missionary decided he must see her for himself how this story had played out. And when he knocked on the door of George's house that evening, he was impressed with the appearance of the entryway. George's face lit up when the missionary introduced himself at the door and quickly invited the visitor into his home. He introduced the missionary to his 4 young children, all handsome young boys and very well behaved, thought the missionary. He was also impressed with the cleanliness and order of the home, and after entering the living room, George's wife carried in a drink from the kitchen where she was preparing dinner. The missionary was taken aback at her beauty, her poise, her grace. He thought to himself that George must have gotten another wife, as the woman was anything but plain and ordinary like the other townspeople had described her. George invited the missionary to stay for dinner, and after a lovely meal, the 2 men retired to some chairs on the front porch. The missionary complimented George on his beautiful wife, great family, and immaculate house. But what happened to the woman you paid 7 cows for? George replied, this is the same woman. The missionary marveled and said that he had heard stories from the other village about this plain, ordinary wife that George had married. What changed? George replied that he had always wanted a 7-cow wife, and she knew he considered her to be a 7-cow wife, and that she had risen to the bride price. She believed in her worth, and she began to live that out in the way she acted today. Are you noticing a theme yet, men, over the last few weeks? Your words have power. If you want a 7-cow wife, talking figuratively here, if you want a wife that's above and beyond every other wife around you, treat her that way from day one and help her believe she is that woman as well. Are you married to an amazing woman worth far more than 7 cows? I hope that you will begin to treat your wife like the princess she is. Love her, exalt her, talk great about her, let her hear you compliment her to other people, sing her praises all the time, especially in front of her kids, especially at church, especially to her family. Sing her praises all the time. Your wife is more valuable than what you realize. And if you will start treating her that way, she will rise to be the woman you have called her out to be. I love you guys. Have a great week.